So today's topic of conversation that I'll be here with and talking with my colleague from Nexer, Jesper over there. Why does a sustainability strategy need a data strategy? It's because you're going to need to understand, in the first place, our advice is you need to figure out what it is that you want to report against. What is it that you want to measure against? And believe me, it's the Wild West out there at the moment. There are over 600 plus different reporting standards available in different areas and regions. Each of these 600 with dozens of subcategories, depending on what you are wanting to capture and report against. And none of them are the same in terms of what needs to be captured, what needs to be reported on, and how that stuff is measured. But what this means is that for every organization, you will be needing to determine multiple outputs, because you'll need to be reporting to well more than one of the sustainability regulations. And that will require much more than one set of inputs. That sustainability profile will be unique, like DNA, to every organization. And it will depend on where you operate, what country are you in, what product category do you have, what's your brand are you trying to put out there, what's the culture, what regulations affect you specifically. So depending on all these different attributes here, they will come together in a unique way for your particular business. And they will determine what data you need to collect. And there's a huge amount of work that you need to do before getting to the point of actually having data ready to report them. And now I hear that lots of organizations are waiting for regulators to tell them what data is going to need to be collected. Or they're waiting for GS1 to come up with a data model so you know what data to be collected. This will be too late. These organizations won't come up with these taxonomies for you in a good enough time for you to get started, get the data collected and modeled, managed, curated, etc., and published out. Actually, what will happen is, this will happen in reverse. Companies like you will start to build reports, and the regulators will pick up on that and say, okay, this looks like a good blueprint, we should turn this into our regulation. It's not going to happen the other way around. So don't wait to get started. But I'll ask Jesper, what do you see from your customers about what they need to do to get started before they're even ready to model data?
These data, they are as part of a flow. So the supply chain of this information, how it's being sourced from, you could say, suppliers and moving forward in supply chain, how is that going about? And I think that there will be a shift in the market, that it will be less about the traditional customer to supplier, supplier to customer, but more of a partnership model. How do you work together with the one that are sourcing the products, that are sourcing the information, sourcing the packaging material, setting the different product category rules so you can reach some of the same definitions of what good data is in terms of sustainability. So it's much more about the collaborative effort of trying to make this work together. And these different labels that is in the bottom of the screen here, there's a lot of overlap between them. So if you solve for one, then there's a high potential that you will solve for maybe 50, 60, or 80% for some of the others. So the reusability of this information, how it can come forward, is another key aspect that I would bring forward.
And that sort of reflects on what Jesper was just saying about, is that sort of creating a sustainability profile for one regulation, much of that data will be reusable against some of the other reports. So you need to be able to create this nexus, really, this sort of complex network whereby you can see the full value chain to which products are related to which standards, to which regulations, and who supplies those products, and where do we sell those products and where do they come from. This sort of network data graph, if you like, comes together to start showing that the full topology of where your data's from, and then that gives you an ability to do things like impact analysis to say, well, what happens if we decide that this supplier isn't suitable? They haven't provided the certification that we expect, and you're able to much more rapidly understand the impact of that on assortments. So the message really is that throwing all this stuff into a data warehouse isn't going to be adequate. The simple answer that a CSO needs to ask is, where do I get a single view of all the sustainability information that exists around our entire product assortment. And so the overwhelming response is, I don't know, from chief sustainability officers, because from what we hear, they are absolutely overwhelmed with the volume of data that they're going to have to collect. And as far as I can tell, have completely underestimated the volumes and complexity of the data that they're going to need to collect. And then let's not forget that these are chief sustainability officers. They're not data managers, data modelers, master data experts, chief data officers, which is why I mentioned earlier that these folks are going to come knocking on your door, because they are suddenly overwhelmed with this tsunami of sustainability data, most of which, or at least much of which, is coming from outside of the organization that isn't necessarily meet the same levels of compliance, governance, regulation that you expect and have internally. And it's all coming towards them, and they're going to need help with the question of, how do I manage all this data? And that's why they're going to be knocking on your door. We need to treat sustainability data with the same discipline that we treat any other master data in our organization. And then we need to have the agility and the flexibility to share that and to publish that data to multiple different channels really quickly. So we need to be able to syndicate that data out to publish channels that can differ depending on the consumer and what those regulations and the different output data models are like. So, we talk about this master data discipline, the need to be able to consolidate data from multiple different sources, the ability to cleanse that data, to be able to apply governance, and to be able to share that data. And that data model is going to need to be flexible. So, are we able to update and make changes? And that's why we recommend this separation of concerns between sustainability attributes and your core product information, so that you kind of have this safety barrier. You need complete open technology to do data exchange, both outbound, but also inbound. As I said, much of your data may come from suppliers, but also third-party data pools are becoming very popular. And then, as we talked about, this embedded governance helps you publish out to various different standards, or maybe create your smart labels, or maybe apply that to your analytics, or publish it out to regulators or reports and accounts. And so, whatever footprint of data it is that you're trying to get, your ESG data, your footprint data management, we need to be able to start at the top of the tree. This is how you go about your process. Understand what's important to you. What are you trying to publish? Which regulatory reports? Which governance and compliance? Which goals are you going over? And then understand the routes that you're going to need in order to grow that tree effectively, and to be able to record that footprint. But again, I ask you, Jesper, what challenges do you see your customers have in sort of getting to this point?
So how to get started, how to collect the data, because these data, they are not just fully available and you can just go and grab them. Now then you need to find it inside your own organization, and if you don't have it, then you need to figure out how to actually create it. And if you don't have it, then where can I buy it? What can I rely on? Would there be any benchmark information that I could go and look for? So some of the barriers is about to identify these data sources and bring them together. The other part, and to spin a bit on what Matthew said before, the Chief Sustainability Officer and the department running by them, then they are very knowledgeable and know a lot about sustainability, and they have identified the need and the urge to actually go in and do something, and they are on the time clock. They know they need to do it today, latest by tomorrow. But if they actually need to find the data and they come knocking on somebody else's door, then they also need to collaborate with those guys. So who is actually in charge of the data? How do they bring it together? And now and then these two different kind of people, where you guys are kind of on the data side of it, together with the Chief Sustainability Officer, how do we actually bridge and establish that collaboration so they can work together and bring this forward? Because single-handed, neither one will actually succeed. It's the collaboration and trying to bring this together. And in recent conversations we've had with customers, going into these conversations, we often figure out that when we are in that room, both with the sustainability people as well as the product side of the business, it is the first time they meet. First time they meet. So they need to learn one another to talk about what is their agenda, what is your agenda, what is yours, and trying to bring that together. So that is a completely new game that they need to figure out how to work together.
To summarize the different points that we had, there will be significant volumes of data to manage and capture, and don't underestimate how much there is. That's certainly been the case for the people we've spoken to, is that they've really underestimated that. Think about being able to create a single source of environmental footprint data. Typically at the moment, this is managed all around the organization, depending, by category managers. They capture the data they need about their products, for instance, and then production facilities, they capture the information they need about their piece of the business. We need to be able to bring this together to create this single source. Governance is critical. All the typical things I mentioned previously about data quality, data assuredness, data timeliness, cleansing business rules, workflows, reminders, etc. There will be so much data, you'll need to keep on top of it, and you'll need help. Building, I talked about this sort of separation of concerns between attribution of sustainability data and your core business processes. Keep that in mind, because things are changing. We don't know what the future's holding. The regulators don't know what the future's holding. The standards, the frameworks, and the compliance reports are going to keep changing. So make sure you bear in mind sort of flexibility and agility in the way that you model data for sustainability information. And of course, like all good projects, you will need not only externally to evidence how you're doing, but internally, you'll need to understand that what you're doing is working. So the classic, make sure you manage and measure your performance. And not just your performance, the performance of your suppliers, as Jesper said, is going to be also a critical issue, but much harder information to get. And you will actually become potentially accountable for the data provided to you by your suppliers. So you won't be able to just take it at their word that this data is true. You'll need to do your own checks and balances to substantiate that. And putting it all in a warehouse isn't adequate. And why? Well, because we need analytics, we need governance, we need data quality checks, KPIs, workflows. So here's the key message, and the solution really to the title of the speech is, why do you need a data management strategy if you have a sustainability strategy?